I think giving our daughters the opportunity to fall in love with something and be passionate about it. And maybe it's cattle, maybe it's goats or gardening. I mean, whatever. But the fact that they're going to have that opportunity in the rural lifestyle that we have, I think is really powerful. And I think there's also just a lot to be learned from understanding the nature around them.
Welcome to the Beef Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandy Buzzard, and it's my pleasure to bring you the trending issues and topics with the best and brightest minds in the beef industry. Today, we have a special guest on our episode. He is the USA Commercial Director for Gigatech USA, a swine technology company, but he is also the co-owner of High Bar Cattle Company, a purebred Yelvian balancer seed stock operation. He grew up on a diversified livestock and crop farm in Northwest Ohio and traveled west to Kansas to compete on the livestock judging teams at Butler Community College and Kansas State University, where he earned his bachelor's, masterate, and doctorate in animal science with a focus on swine nutrition and reproduction. He now resides in Greeley, Kansas, and is here to speak with us today about all the things that happen on our ranch. Y'all, please welcome my husband and business partner, Hyatt Frobose. And enter stage left. I planned that. So, viewers, of those of you who are watching, thanks for being here, and we're excited to have Hyatt on. Apparently, you have been a requested guest, so that was interesting for me to learn. But so to start off with, we're just going to jump right into the questions here. Can you tell us about how you got involved in the beef industry? I gave a little bit of background on how you grew up, but how you got involved in the beef industry and your career path so far, and I guess what you're doing these days.
Well, pleasure to be here, and appreciate the interest in our insider baseball on how our operation is working in our life. But my background actually really started in the beef industry. Growing up in Northwest Ohio, our family had a cattle operation, cow calf and feedlot. And so I really was raised in that environment. I had a passion as well for the swine industry, and that's what led me down some of my educational path. But I knew that probably at the end of the day, I wanted to not only work in one species, but have the opportunity to stay involved in another species. And so in my day job of swine, I don't get the opportunity to have pigs. And so it's worked out nicely to be able to grow our cattle business because I have a mutual passion in that species. And so we've adapted to the opportunities that have presented themselves here in Eastern Kansas, and excited about what the next roads look like for that.
So you mentioned that we don't have pigs for a multitude of reasons, but one being that you work because of biosecurity. We can't have pigs here at the house because you have to give conscious awareness to that between biosecurity, between pigs at our house and pigs on a farm. So what are some of the unique challenges and rewards of raising beef cattle compared to working with hogs for our audience members?
Yeah. So obviously there's some key differences, but some similarities between beef and swine. I would say one of the things that's nice about a hog farm in a lot of ways is that when the weather's pretty nasty, you're going into a hog farm and typically showering in, you're changing clothes, and you're in a covered, ventilated environment where the ventilation is prepared to be good for the pigs and for the people. Not so much in the beef cattle industry. So we get the highs and the lows because cattle are raised almost exclusively outdoors. And on our ranch, it is pretty much all outdoors with a few shelters that we have. So that comes with some benefits. You know, when we get the chance to ride through pastures in the sunshine and nice weather, it sure seems really rewarding and nice. But when you're dealing with frozen waters or dealing with muddy conditions when you're putting out hay, or the heat of the summer when the cattle are really hot and have fly issues, I would say that there's plenty of downsides to that as well. So I think it comes back to just different species being raised in different environments. And we love that we can have our cattle outside and in the type of ranching environment that we love. But it definitely comes with its share of challenges because we are so much more dependent on how the weather behaves. And, most recently we've been dealing with a pretty severe drought in the Midwest, and the need for water to really have enough food and be able to, feed the animals through the winter is a challenge that is pretty stressful because there's only so much you can do about it. And you'd have to just adapt to the changing environment around you.
Yeah, August and February are really not fun months for having beef cattle, at least where we live, because of the triple degree heat and humidity in August. And then February is the August of winter, basically. So when it's 20 below.
For me, I guess another one that I guess strikes close to home for me is with my training in nutrition. I obviously have the most depth of knowledge as working with monogastrics and swine in particular, but by owning cattle and working with cattle that are at all stages from gestation to lactation to then developing our bulls for marketing, I get to deal with the challenges of ruminant nutrition, which I will be admittedly not as expert in, but I think that I have a lot more respect for ruminant nutritionists in hindsight, because the monogastric stomachs are a little easier because we don't have to deal with forage and bulkiness of ingredients and such near as much. So dealing with mineral nutrition and forage nutrition, as well as still trying to, maximize gains in calves and growing cattle, is something that I enjoy the challenge of, but it's definitely an area that I have a lot to learn. And so I lean heavily on people that I trust in the industry that can maybe help double check that I'm going the right direction on things.
Yeah, I think that's something that we both learned, is that, it takes a long time to get up to speed with things. Like, you don't just jump into having a ranch and then all of a sudden you got everything mastered. Like, it takes a lot of work to stay up with technology or new practice or something like that. So going off of what you said there, how do you or we stay up, how do you stay up to date with latest advancements and the best practices in the beef industry?
Well, as someone who is admittedly time poor, I think this is a challenge for me, because I don't exactly just have a lot of time to kill to dedicate to the newest publications in the industry. But what I typically would use is social media. I would use subscriptions to industry newsletters that might be as wide ranging as from things from our Gelbvieh Breed Association to subscriptions to beef industry magazines. Those are some of the electronic options that I use to get my daily dose of what's new and interesting. And then I also subscribe to a few audio options that are maybe market reports, or giving me a pulse of what the price of both ingredients and stocker cattle, fat cattle are doing. And then I also watch what other producers are doing. I probably have more and more respect for the ranchers who've been doing this a lot longer than me. The older I get, the more I appreciate how ranchers have been doing this for their whole life, have a pretty keen eye for understanding the nature around them. And I've learned to watch and see what they're doing, because there's usually a pretty good reason why they're doing something at that time. And sometimes something that maybe didn't make sense to me when it was in an animal science textbook, when I see how they've reacted to certain changing conditions, I can learn from a lot of the ranchers around me and try to avoid some of the unnecessary pitfalls that would befall us otherwise.
You mentioned listening to cattle market information and stalkers and things like that. I don't think we talked about that in the upfront. I said that we have a seed stock operation. We have purebred Gelbvieh and balancer cattle. We sell bulls and heifers, but we also do grass cattle. We've done grass cattle the past couple of years. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we do and why we now have stalkers, when that was not really our business plan when we got started 7-ish years ago?
Yeah. So I know that we may talk a little bit more about some future goals and such, but one pro or con to our situation is that we don't have a large land base that we own ourselves. We moved to this area. My wife's from this area, but we didn't have a land base that we inherited or anything. So we're building our operation from the ground up. And what that involves is cash renting land from neighbors and area landowners to graze our cattle on. And depending on the way those relationships are structured, they can't always be counted on as a long-term guarantee that we will have that into perpetuity. And so how we approach balancing our needs and desires with the changing rental situation, one hedge that we've done that's, I think, worked well for us thus far is we don't know what the weather is going to provide for us as far as annual forage. And so instead of trying to grow our seed stock operation to maximize all of the grass we have, what we've tried to do is have a flexible grazing option with grass cattle in the summer, buying yearlings, and grazing them through the summer in conjunction with our cow-calf operation, that's essentially allowed us to better utilize the grass that we have and maximize the value of our cash rent situation. However, if we have a drought year where we can't graze as many cattle, we just adjust how many we purchase in April or May or in springtime. And if we do lose some rented ground, that's something that we can opt not to purchase each year, because that's an annual purchase. Whereas our seed stock operation is our high value genetics that we've invested in over time, and we really don't want to be forced into a situation where we have to get rid of those girls.
Yeah, we don't want to liquidate those. Yeah, I just think that's interesting to share.
It brings some different challenges to our operation because we're dealing with cattle that we, for the most part, didn't raise. So we're dealing with uncertain health backgrounds, how to get them started up on grass and supplemented properly. But also we're trying to maximize return and minimize costs. So there's some cost management, market opportunities, whether or not to use some of the hedging practices that are available in the industry today. We waffle on those, and it really, it's gotten me more in tune with the changing cattle market, because in our seed stock operation, we're setting the price of our bulls and trying to, I guess, court interested prospects that we have bulls that are high enough quality to serve their needs. But in the terms of our grass cattle, we really have a commodity product. And so to some extent, we have to be price takers on that. But when we market them strategically can matter as to how it falls into the cattle price cycle. And the thing that's really in our control is minimizing cost. And so we want to maximize revenue by doing that. But we have a totally different pricing situation with those cattle as compared to the purebred animals we're trying to market as our primary business.
Yeah. And earlier you said that something about when we're growing, we're not growing the seed stock because we're getting the grass cattle in those years we have more grass. We are growing the seed stock business every year. We retain heifers. We are we replace the ones that are culled out, and then we grow a little bit every year, but we're not expanding and growing exponentially. We're taking some of that growth and moving it over to the grass cattle so we can be more liquid in there while it's still maintaining a conservative amount of growth in the seed stock herd. We're not just staying at a constant level. So there's growth happening. It's just not oh, we have a lot of grass, let's buy 30 cows.
In my experience, I've seen some other people that have entered into the seed stock cattle business and grown really quickly. And I think sometimes that comes at the cost of quality or the ability to manage things the way you want. So with all of the things that we have going on in our lives and my day job and our kids, I think trying to grow the purebred side of our business too quickly would be questionable in terms of whether we could maintain the quality that we expect.
Yeah.
And so we've been trying to grow that the right way, not just at a certain clip. And I think it's ultimately benefited the cattle that we have to offer, but it sometimes is 2 steps forward, 1 step back as well.
Yeah. So just transitioning a little bit to this, you're talking about staying up to date and different newsletters. You mentioned podcasts. I hope that you listen to the beef podcast. Things that you listen to learn more about practices and advancements, things like that. Do you want to talk about some of the sustainable practices that we do on our ranch to minimize environmental impact and also things that promote animal welfare?
Yeah. From a sustainability standpoint, I know you may be more of an expert on some of these things than I am, so I may let you comment further. But the 2 things that come to mind for me immediately is the way that we rotationally graze our ground is we've really structured the ground that we both own and rent so that we can maximize grazing intensity over short periods and then maximize the rest periods in between those grazes. And we have different species of grasses on different places, and we're trying to graze them at the right time and not overgraze them by, taking half, leaving half, and then resting that as long as possible before we need to come back to it if there's additional forage available. So we've really strategically tried to manage the size of our pastures with the movements of cattle so that we don't have to put them in a trailer and haul them all over the country, because that's obviously not very sustainable. Yeah. But it also is just practical because of labor and time. And if we can walk them to the next pasture, that's sure advantageous. But there's important limitations like water. And when we had a drought year, making sure that our ponds have enough water in each of these pastures so that we can effectively rotate, that's a limit. Another thing that I would say is sustainable is the fact that we're trying to maximize the number of days that we can graze per year. In our mind, the less hay we have to harvest, the less supplemental forage that we have to provide, the better. If we can have the cattle out doing their job, and as long as we have forage that's nutritionally good enough or supplemented properly that they can be out doing their thing in their natural environment, that's our goal. And so we haven't achieved the ability to feed or to graze 360 days a year, but I think in most years we're really grazing from April 1st all the way through till about February 1st. And so we've got a 60 to 90 day period, depending on the climate, that we do have to supplement. But I've been pretty happy with the fact that with our breeding program for our cows, at least, we've been able to keep them on grass, a very high percentage of the year, and maybe more so than some of our neighbors that rely more heavily on feeding hay.
And part of that, there's multiple things that go into that. Part of that is that we fall calve. It's like we don't have to, there's some nutritional needs that our herd doesn't need as what spring calving would. And there's some takeaway.
Yeah, it's just different though. Some would argue that spring calvers have a benefit there because the cows are on a lower plane of nutrition in the winter months, whereas our cows are lactating. So we do fall calve, and that's been a choice that we made on multiple levels. One, to maximize our calving success, because we have relatively mild weather at the time when we're calving in September and October, as compared to spring calvers that will be calving during the winter months a lot of times. For us, though, the downside to that is we do have cows in mid-lactation during those months that we do have to supplement. And that comes with a cost.
Yeah.
But we also do it as a way to provide the best cattle for our customers. And a lot of bull buyers, myself included, when we're purchasing bulls, I prefer an older bull that's able to cover more cows and is more mature and ready, not one that maybe is at risk of losing condition in their first year and being able to cover a limited number of cows. So we fall calves primarily so that we can offer 15 to 18 month old bulls or greater to most of our customers. The vast majority of producers in our area are still spring calvers, and they're looking for bulls during that January, February, March, April time period. And so the fact that we can have a more age advantaged bull to offer is, to me, a competitive advantage over some of our contemporaries who market just yearling bulls that have to push them a little harder to get to a marketable weight.
Something that Hyatt has left out about why we are fall calving is when we first got started, that was also the time that he finished his PhD, and he was, Hyatt's job requires him to travel quite a bit in that winter, spring calving time. And I'm not calving by myself in the cold winter months. So that was also a significant player in why we're fall calving. It was a multitude of things, but those were two of the big players. So I don't really have a lot to add about the sustainable practices. I'm very big on rotational grazing. Hyatt and we affectionately call ourselves grass geeks because I just love seeing talls down to grass, and we turn them out in May or mid-April, maybe May. And then we really like to make sure that we're leaving half of it behind so that it can get a really good root system, grow down in the soil. That improves the water holding capacity of the soil, which in turn improves the nutrient content and capacity of the soil. So it's really all linked together. It's not just the grass, it's the stuff below the surface that, that the grass and the roots also play a role in. So we are a long way from being top of the line environmentally sustainable, but we are working every year. We've started employing cover crops on the small amount of crop acres that we have, and doing some no-till and things like that. So we're always trying new things to try to be more sustainable and get more by putting fewer inputs. So moving on, we've talked a little bit about the future, but what specific goals of ours do you want to share about the future of our ranch?
Well, I think Brandy and I are fairly aligned in the fact that we do want to continue to grow the number of bulls and the quality of bulls that we can offer, because of the fact that we were starting from scratch and that we wanted to grow the right way. We didn't just jump right into having a live auction or even an online auction for bulls. We've been private treaty marketing our bulls, and that's served us well. It's given us a chance to get to know our customers better and hopefully be able to understand their needs and how we can make better cattle for them. But I think it's both of our goals is to get to that point where we could offer enough cattle to fill an auction area where we want to have them sold at. And so that's the goal we're moving towards and hope to do so in the coming years. That being said, I'd also be remiss if I didn't say that I want us to be seen as one of, if not the go-to supplier of Gelbvieh and balancer genetics for people in our area. I think we have the ability to make that quality, and I really want to have cattle that are rooted in the commercial goals that commercial cattlemen need. I obviously want them to also perform well in the feed yard, and my background with livestock judging and caring about phenotype, it's still important to me that that you like what they look like. And so I don't know that we are ever going to be totally chasing after ribbons in the show ring, but we're going to use the show ring as a marketing tool. And I think it's important that you like the cattle you have and that your customers find your cattle, phenotypically attractive. And so that's definitely remains part of my goal. I don't want to grow to the point that we are compromising the quality standards that we've set for our cattle.
Right. And we don't have a live sale yet. Like, we've done private treaty for 17, 18, 19. This is like our fourth year of private treaty sale. But this coming year, this fall, early winter, we are actually going to have our first like private treaty open house. So we're excited about that. We've already started. We're trying to figure out what day or weekend that is going to be in the early winter. But we're excited about that. We've got a new barn going up that has like cattle showing pens. And so we're excited to have that growth and to be at the point where we can market more than, a couple handfuls a year. So that's exciting for us to finally realize some of that growth that we've been working for since our first load of cows arrived in April of 2016.
I mean, some of our other like performance related goals, one that is really important to me is maximizing the maternal efficiency of our cows. And I think a metric that we try to use as a reflection of how a cow's doing is pounds of calf weaned relative to her mature body weight. And it'd be my goal, we're not there yet, but it'd be my goal that if all of our cows could average over 50% of their body weight in their calf weaned, I consider that a major advantage, and something that could really speak to the efficiency of our cows. But that takes time and takes selection, and we're in the process of getting there. But there's several other performance related metrics that we would use, but that's one that sticks out to me as pounds of calf weaned relative to the cow's body weight.
Yeah. So lots of goals. We can't go through all of them because we don't have much time, but
we'd like more land that we own.
Yeah, that's a goal.
We're working on that too, but land is expensive, and having land that fits our needs close to us is rarely available. So we're trying to stay in a position to where we can pounce on that when the opportunity presents itself.
That plays nicely into the next question. I don't know if you planned that or not, but it's a good segue into what advice we would give to some people who are interested in starting their own ranch or getting involved in industry. And so like land is obviously something you need, either rented or owned, when you're going to get started in cattle ranching or an industry. And so I guess, what advice do you have? Do you have any advice for everybody? I wish that we had, I don't know.
One that would sure help is if you marry someone that has a bunch of land. That's a good start, but that doesn't necessarily apply to us.
We both failed on that front. Neither one of us had any land.
For those of us that have a passion in being involved in the beef industry, but don't have that advantage, I think you got to be pretty strategic and have a pretty sharp pencil. Two things that I would recommend is a hell of a lot of patience, because it's going to take time to build what you want, and you're going to have to be well-heeled to financially in a position to take advantage of opportunities. I would really recommend, though, that you stay open-minded, and when an opportunity presents itself, sometimes you may need to walk through that door, even if it's not what you picture as perfect. We've rented some pastures that are pretty sorry in terms of quality or fencing, and we've had to make do with what opportunities we had, but they were stepping stones to get us to where we are today. And we fully anticipate we're going to have to take more of those stepping stones until we get to where we want to be. But I think a lot of patience and, trying to remain as nimble and flexible as you can, so that you can evolve into what the industry gives you. And I talked on this earlier a little bit too, but I would watch and learn from seasoned ranchers, especially those that have, clearly been successful, in spite of what they had in front of them. There's some that are better at really managing their cattle operation for profit, and others that are just landowners. Those are two different things. But I think when you watch and learn from seasoned cattlemen, you can see some of the things that they're doing and maybe understand better why they're doing it when you see it be successful. So I think even more than I see in the pork industry, There's so many nuances to cattle production that are so dependent on each operation that you have to watch and learn from other people, because it's a softer science than maybe some other things that you can just learn in a classroom.
Yeah, there's a quote or a saying, or I don't know, a mindset that's like, be firm in your goals, but flexible in the journey. And so I'd say that's something that we really embody, that like, we know our big pie in the sky goal, that we know we've already shared those big goals for our ranch. But like, it's not always going to be like this perfect way that you get there. Not everything's going to fall easily into place, or you might have to wait longer or look in a different way. So I think that's like a short way to kind of like, present what
with
you were saying.
My training in nutrition and animal science, I want everything to fit into a box nicely, and I want to be able to crunch the numbers in an Excel spreadsheet and make sure that I'm making the right decision. But in so many situations with our cattle operation, you have to be prepared to make those decisions in a judgment, in a snap moment, because the market is up, or because these ingredients are available and you need to take advantage of buying them because that opportunity is fleeting.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make a decision on the fly because these cattle are looking different than what they were supposed to. So I've had to develop a rationale that is still to be prepared for the question or the situations that'll be in front of me with science at its core. But I need to not be paralyzed by indecision and just jump when the opportunity is right for things to make the right decision for our cattle and our operation as a whole.
Yeah, flexibility is really important. So that's all good advice. I think that's good advice. Transitioning a little bit, I don't think, did we mention this? We have, we have children. We didn't talk about that, but we do have 2 daughters. I guess this is transitioning a bit into like a new topic, but like, how has raising cattle influenced our family dynamic and brought us closer together? I would like to hear this answer.
Well, to be fair, we did have cattle before we had kids. So yeah. It's actually the kids have kind of to come after we started getting cattle. But in the midst of our growth of our operation and the changes we've had, we've added kids to the mix. And I would say it's pretty safe to say that adds challenges.
Yeah.
Because I know, for example, it's really hard when one of us is engaged doing things with the cattle operation that we have to do, because it's part of the natural cycle of things we got to do to manage the cattle. And the other one has to stay home to watch the kid. And that's been different ones of us at different times. But, when you've got a bawling infant, you can't necessarily go and ride pastures with that going on. And so it's forced us to kind of divide and conquer. And in some cases that's been really challenging, but I would say that we've had the benefit of seeing when we can bring the kids with us and we can have the kids with us and enjoying some of that. It's brought us closer together as a family too, because it's fun to be able to do those things together, and for our daughters to start to see the fruits of the labor and to see them really enjoy being around the cattle and the way we do things has a lot of rewarding dynamic to it as well.
Yeah, before we had kids, but if you are watching online or something, these are our daughters. Oakley, I'm showing a picture here, Oakley and Quincy. I don't know if it'll show there. Hang on. No, that didn't make it any better. Anyway, we have a 6-year-old daughter who's named Oakley and a almost 2-year-old daughter named Quincy, and they're the coolest thing ever. But before we had kids, Hyatt and I did everything together for the cattle. We fed everything together. We would work cattle after we got off work, like out in the dark and by the light of a spotlight in the barn. We did everything together. And that was definitely changed our dynamic when we had our first baby, because then we had her in December. So I was the one staying home with the bawling baby while he was out doing this feeding that needed to be done. Although that first winter he was traveling a lot. So it was actually me and Oakley feeding a lot of cattle, just the 2 of us in the feed truck. But that, it has changed the dynamic. It's been difficult, but it's something that we wanted a family and we want to have cattle. So we have to you have to adjust. And we were just talking about being flexible, we have to be flexible. So that's important. what values and lessons do you think the girls have gained from growing up so far in this environment? Like Quincy isn't really gaining a lot of values at the age of 21 months, but Oakley definitely. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
speak to that.
I would say we're still on the front side of this. We have an opportunity with the lifestyle that we have to teach our kids, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we are passionate about doing this, is because Brandy and I were both raised in ranching and the livestock environment, and there's just so many life skills that I think have helped set us up for success in our careers and in our lives. And so we want to do that for our kids as well. But, I think obviously hard work and decision making, I think, are two that are critical. I see too many people decrying the younger generations for maybe not wanting to be able to work and do things that maybe we have. So I think giving our daughters the opportunity to fall in love with something and be passionate about it. And maybe it's cattle, maybe it's goats or gardening. I mean, whatever. But the fact that they're going to have that opportunity in the rural lifestyle that we have, I think is really powerful. And I think there's also just a lot to be learned from understanding understanding the nature around them. I mean, I'm not necessarily encouraging them to have to see cattle live and die, but I think there is some values that come out of that they understand the products that we're raising come from hard work, and that, when an animal dies, it's both sad from an animal welfare standpoint, but it's also part of Mother Nature. And we get the opportunity to show them the importance of valuing life and how we raise our animals so that we can try to give them the best lifestyle that they can get.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and I mean, Hyatt's speaking about life and death. There's a lot of things between those that they see. But like, I think that they can still be empathetic about life, animal life and biology, while also being realistic about it. Like I remember many years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, death does happen on a ranch, sadly. And we had a heifer die, and it had just died that morning. And we hadn't gotten it out of the pen yet. And I remember Oakley and I were walking out to a different part of, a different corral pen out here. And she was little. I mean, she couldn't have been any older than 3. And she was walking with me, and she just looked over at it and went, "That cow dead." And then just kept walking with me. And it wasn't said like in a way that like she didn't like flip it. It was kind of flippantly. She very much is sad when we talk about if we lose an animal or a calf or something like that. That's very sad for her. But like she understood that animal was dead, and it didn't like traumatize her. We didn't take her over there and like make her stare at it or anything, or make her do a necropsy on it. But she just has accepted it, that's part of life on a ranch. And it's a kind of is a sad thing. We're not happy that the heifer died, but like, it's just, for us, it's one of those small moments of raising your children on a ranch that like we can look back and talk about how she's been involved when she was little. Like when I say that Oakley was feeding cows with me, I mean, like at 1 week old, Oakley was feeding cows with me in the feed truck, and she's done that her whole life. Quincy, pretty much, I mean, she was born in August. We were feeding cows in August, but Quincy was in the barn with me, cleaning horse stalls at a week old, and is bounced along in the feed truck in the car seat. So like they're very much raised in it, and they seemingly enjoy it so far. So, but that cow dead will always be one of my favorite memories.
So we kind of skimmed over the fact that we also have a freezer beef business.
Yes.
And we sell custom freezer beef to customers around the country.
We're very diversified.
Yeah. And it's actually been a really nice additive part of our business, because we'll have bulls that aren't good enough to sell.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't, sell 100% of our male calves as commercial bulls. Anybody that's listening would call BS if I said that we were. So on those that we do have to cut, we feed them out and we market them through a different channel where we think we can gain some additional value by feeding them our way. And I grew up feeding cattle, so I feel pretty comfortable doing that. And Brandy does a great job of marketing the freezer beef, but I get a real kick out of Oakley because when we take a cow to the butcher shop, to the packing plant, a local butcher, she calls it the cow chopper. And so when she's talking about one that is going that direction, it's, we took that cow to the cow chopper. And I think that's just as funny as that cow dead.
I mean, she understands what's happening. Like she knows that they're going to go and be, I wouldn't say the word slaughtered to her, but they're going to go to slaughter. And she's fine with it. But she doesn't speak like it's traumatized her or anything like that. She's
just matter of fact.
Yeah, she's matter of fact. And it's funny because there's the cow chopper. And then like 2 summers ago, or maybe last summer, I had bought 4 hens that I thought were hens. And after they matured, they turned out to be roosters. And so Hyatt butchered them in the yard. And so Oakley called him the chicken chopper. So like, we're very comfortable with the circle of life on our ranch. And that kind of plays into I already touched on this one, but it says like, can we share ways in which the family actively participates in the daily operations of the ranch? I feel like we've kind of touched on that. Like we all in the winter, like this past winter, Quincy was just like a year and a half ish, and Oakley was right at 6. And so we on Saturdays and Sundays, Hyatt, one day he would generally go feed on his own and roll out hay and stuff like that. And then like the other day we would all go as a family. And in the summer, usually that's how it is like one day we will all go on the weekend together, and the other day Hyatt will just go by himself. And then during the week, it's either me or our herdsmen are going to do those things. But like we try to have them be involved with it in small ways every day. Like this morning, Oakley helped me she fed all the horses. She helped me feed the chickens. And, she's out there around the feeder cattle and stuff every day, like not in with them, but like around the cattle every day. So they're exposed every day. But we try to do that as a family at least once a week.
Our kids get to spend a lot of time on the back of a flatbed feed truck as we're feeding the cattle here at our place. They're either ones being fed out or bulls we're developing. And Quincy is just under 2 right now. She has a pretty high level of cattle mineral intake, and she likes eating the protein pellets. So she probably gets a decent amount of supplementation on the side for that. And I remember Oakley when she was that age doing it too. And as long as it's not anything that's going to be toxic to him, I don't get too worked up about it. But I think it's funny.
None of it's toxic.
I know, but I think it's just funny how much she enjoys flinging grain around and tasting it, and just the enjoyment of that while we're doing the daily tasks.
She took a big old mouthful of mineral, like just regular mineral, about a month ago, and like came crying to me because it was like she took a very large bite. She was not very happy with it. So I think she learned her lesson. Okay, so we're talking about the family dynamic and how we all have, worked together and things like that. What role does your spouse, aka me, play in the day-to-day operations of the ranch, and how does that involvement contribute to the success of the operation?
Well, I'd start by saying that I think Brandy and I share a lot of the roles, and we can be interchangeable when need be for various things. I don't know of anything that we do on the ranch that you can't do when you need to. It's just a matter of we have to divide and conquer because of our family and the fact that we both have careers. So there's certainly things that I do maybe more and she does maybe more. Brandy does a really important role of helping us market cattle. She's very good at that. She's very active in a lot of the circles where we can get our cattle more visible. She finds opportunities for us to market freezer beef, and those are things that I would not do very well. So I appreciate that, and helping us market and picture bulls and publish that we have them available. Those are things that she takes a very active role in that I fail to do. But like I said earlier, she's involved in the feeding of the cattle and sourcing of the forage or supplement and making sure that we move cattle on horseback. She's every bit as capable as I am on any of those things, and then some. So I think, we do everything we need to. We can both do all of the tasks on the farm, on the ranch. But usually it just works out that we kind of divide and conquer where it makes the most sense.
I don't know that I could do everything. I'm not Hyatt has the training in nutrition, and even though your degree isn't in like beef nutrition, like Hyatt has that basic nutrition foundation in terms of that, and you have the contacts for that. So like, I'm very comfortable saying that at this stage I couldn't do it. That doesn't mean I couldn't figure out how to do it, but it's definitely not something that if I was like, okay, Hyatt, you go move cows and I'll stay and formulate rations, I don't think that would work very well. It'd probably just be better for me to move cows and Hyatt to formulate the rations. But from a day-to-day standpoint, I think that that hits really well. Hyatt does a really good job of researching different feed, like all of our feed, like all the nutrition and the inputs and things like that. And he works with a beef nutritionist, but feed can get really expensive. So looking at different ingredients that you can substitute when we are feeding supplement. We've switched from corn silage to sorghum silage and using forage sorghum. And we had a variety of reasons for doing that. And Hyatt, made that decision based on our land availability and the things that it would, how it would benefit our operation in terms of feeding silage to our cows in the fall. So that's definitely a really valuable asset, I guess, that he brings to the table. Whereas day to day, I am, I'm doing a lot of our chores around the ranch because Hyatt's role, his full-time job, he's in an office role and working. And I don't currently have like a full-time job. I'm an independent self-contractor. So, when we are rotating pastures every 2-3 weeks, like I'm going to do that. I'm saddled up. Me and our herdsman Corey are going to make those moves. Or if we need to go check the eyes on the grass cattle to see if there's some pink eye in there, and we need a couple people to doctor. Our herdsman Corey is doctoring, and then I am assisting if I can. So, and then on big work days, like when we process the stockers, like we were both doing that. So that's the nature of having a ranch, is like no one day is the same. But I think we fill out our roles. Like we both know where we have strengths and how we can both provide those to the ranch. So, that was a long answer to kind of just support what he was saying. But, what are our hopes and aspirations for our family's involvement in the beef cattle industry, and how do you envision it shaping our legacy? And I do want to add something real quick about like our family's involvement, because our family is not just Hyatt and I and our daughters. Like our herdsman is my cousin, Corey. And before, when we were just getting started, and it was, we got our first 25 cows or something like that. Like we didn't have a lot of land rented. We didn't have a lot of facilities. Like we were very just getting started. And like my dad, who only lives like a mile from us, he was here working cattle with us all the time. He provided advice. And so like, he is not like a profit share in the ranch or anything like that, but he played a gigantic role in helping us get to the place where we are. He came over and offered advice when Hyatt was traveling very early on, and like we had a small baby. He would come. He still does when Hyatt's traveling, or when I'm traveling. When one of us is gone, he comes over and helps with chores, because it's difficult to like manage 2 children running around and also run a tractor or a skid loader. Just, we have to be cognizant, and he will come over and do that, help in whatever role we need multiple nights a week. So I think that can't be overstated how important family has been to the growing our ranch. Hyatt's parents have both come from Ohio at different times of the year and like helped us. They were here processing cattle when Oakley was like 2 months old or something like that. And she was in the feed truck in the heat while we were working cattle, and I would get in and feed her and get back out. And Hyatt's mom and sister come and help us AI in the fall every year. And so I think that it can't be stated enough how we have had a tremendous amount of help and support and assistance from both sides of our family that have really helped us get to where we're at. And we're immensely appreciative of that. So even if some of our family members aren't involved on like a day-to-day basis, they're still very much an integral part of the operation that we would not, that we value and appreciate them very much. And so anyway, I'll get back to the question of like, what are your hopes for our family's involvement in the beef industry moving forward? And then like, how do you envision it shaping our legacy?
Well, I'll try to keep it short here, but I think it's implied that we're trying to grow our operation and grow our land base and our cattle operation so that we have something to hand off to our kids. And so that's our goal. We're going to grow that the right way that makes sense for our life and on how we can market the cattle. But ultimately we're trying to give ourselves something to give to the next generation. And hopefully it's something that they want to take over and continue or do it their way. But also, we want to maybe give them some of the things that we didn't have the opportunity to have as a good handoff in getting them started in the beef industry. And so I hope that we'll be in a position where we can do that. And to what extent, I think it may be unclear. I don't know if it's going to be something that we can bring our daughters back in full time from the get-go, but if we can grow to that point and it makes good business sense to do so, then awesome. But even if it's just the lifestyle and the education that they can get from it, and they decide to go a different direction, we'll respect that too. But we want to give them the opportunity to come back to it and kind of cement our legacy and continue to be seen as, a go-to breeder for really high quality cattle for commercial producers.
I have my sights set on retiring before I'm like 80. So I hope that they decided what they want to do before then, because, we're not doing this just for them. Hyatt and I both, when we first met, we both wanted to be involved in the cattle industry and be involved in production ag. So we're definitely not doing this just so our daughters have a ranch. And I don't mean that that's what you were getting at. I'm just speaking from like my point of view is like, I'm not doing this just so they can have a ranch. I genuinely love moving cattle. gathering in the morning as the sun comes up over the land, some of the land that we lease is gorgeous. It's a few things that I enjoy more than being horseback around cattle or just being horseback in general. But, I don't want to do it until I'm 80. I want to be maybe involved and like be able to walk out on the back porch and drink a cup of tea and like look at the cows, but maybe I'm not in charge of moving them when I'm 80 also. So I think that, definitely if they want to come back, we would love to have them back, but I want to know before I'm 80 if they're coming back. So, but want them to be involved, but also want them to be able to chase their own goals and dreams. And if their dreams aren't involved in agriculture, that's okay, because they will have grown up getting that exposure and that appreciation for the land and the livestock.
We have a time and labor saving product for you. Beef and Dairy Agri-Slat by Healthy Farms is your solution. No more lugging jugs around the barn every month. With Beef and Dairy Agri-Slat, you simply drop the slat through the floor twice a year, and it works to break down solids, reduces crusting and forming. To learn more, visit myhealthyfarms.com.
So that is the end of our like regular questions, or the questions focus on you and our ranch. And so I have wrap-up questions that we ask these of every guest. And I know that you know these questions because you listen to all the episodes of the Beef Podcast. So you are kind of prepared for these. So the first one, they're not rapid fire questions because I don't ask them fast enough. But what is your favorite beef-related book or resource?
Right. I was thinking about this, and I this is back to being time poor. I maybe don't get the chance to read a lot of beef-related books, but one comes to mind that Brandy was good enough to find for me that I'd heard of a while back, but is an old book called The Battle of Bull Runts. And as an animal breeder, I find it a very interesting topic because it dates back to the days when Herefords were one of the few breeds that were really popular in the U.S. And they had a genetic defect called snorter dwarfism that was running rampant through the gene pool prior to a lot of the genetic technology we have today. And it's a really fascinating read to understand how they were able to track back to the first animals that exhibited that defect, a recessive gene, and how they were able to get it out of the Hereford industry back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. And I think that's just a fascinating tale that as an animal breeder, I think is really neat to see how people dealt with those issues in animal selection prior to all of the technology that's available today.
So I had to look for a long time for this book, y'all. I put it it will be in the show notes, the name of it, but good luck finding one because he told me about this book like 10 years ago. We've been together almost 15, and I have been looking for this book availability for years and years and years. And I finally got it. Was it for your birthday or anniversary this year, or Christmas or anniversary?
I can't remember.
Sometime in the last year, I got this book, and like to make Hyatt like be really excited and smile and like say, wow, like it's a big deal to get like that kind of reaction out of a gift. And so I nailed it. I was so proud of myself. I will never read the book. He can just read it and tell me about it. But I was really happy. I nailed it. So that's your book one. What is a book not related to the beef industry that you are currently reading, or in your case that you might be listening to? Hyatt likes to listen to books on like
audiobooks.
Audiobooks, that's what they're called.
Yeah, so I do have some windshield time for my job, and that when I'm not on the phone, which is rare anymore, and I'm driving, I tend to listen to audiobooks. And an author that I've been following really closely is Peter Zeihan. He's a geopolitical strategist, and he has some really fascinating books on where different shifting politics in the world are leading. And I'm just finishing up The Accidental Superpower. He's actually got 4 books, but that one was his first book, and I didn't read that one first. but I'm coming back around to it, and it's really interesting. But I enjoy a better understanding geopolitics and how different the economics of different countries all fit together and affect their decisions.
What was that one called? I'll put it in the show notes.
The Accidental Superpower.
Okay, Accidental Superpower by Peter Zeihan. It's listeners and audience. Zeihan? Did you say that?
Zeihan.
I spelled it wrong, but the book title will be in the footnotes for you to look up. And so that's all. Oh, wait, there's one more rapid fire question. I'm so unprepared right now. Okay, so I asked this question of everybody. What is a trait of someone you know, like someone you look up to? Think of one of their traits that allows them to be successful. Like a mentor or something like that, or your wife. That didn't even get a smile. For those of you who can't see, I did not even get a smile.
I'm trying to decide which one I guess I would focus on, but I think learning from others is something that I come to appreciate more and more as I get older in my career. I'm learning from those who came before me.
That's a trait of that someone else has.
Yeah, being open-minded enough to watch others and emulate them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. I see the angle now. Okay. Well, that is all that we have time for today. Thank you, Hyatt, for taking time out of your day to join us. I do appreciate that because I know that you are very busy pretty much all the time. So I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on the Beef Podcast. Can I answer this question? If people want to find us or learn more about their ranch, where can they do that? Can I do this?
Sure.
Okay. You can find us on Instagram at High Bar Cattle Co. That's HIGH bar BAR Cattle Co. And on Facebook, the same name, High Bar Cattle Co. And on our website at www.highbarcattlecompany.com. And all that information will be in the show notes. So we would love for you to check out what we're doing. And if you have any questions, you can look us up that way, or you can look Hyatt up. His email is readily available, as is his phone number on our website. So anyway, thank you for coming on the show today, Hyatt. I appreciate it. And so
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining into this recent episode of the Beef Podcast. We will talk to you all next week. And don't forget, we have a webinar coming up June 22nd. We hope you all register for that and sign on and join us for that. So have a great day.